Hey guys, what's up? Unrested back again, and I took my face out of the camera and just showed you the streets of Japan. I got such a positive response. It really made me realize that you guys love these walk and talk videos. And I apologize I didn't do more of these. Every once in a while, I think I would see one or two comments like, "What happened to the walk and talks? What happened to the walk and talks?" Um, I did shut them down for a little bit because of COVID. It got a little bit hard to have anywhere to walk to because everything was closed. And I usually just film these when I was on my way to something. And that's what I just did today. And I wanted to make sure that I did it for you guys because that's what you requested. And now that I'm doing Patreon again, I'm doing my videos again. I got 2 channels. I'm selling some artwork. Things are really nice. I want to say thank you to all the people who did donate to the Patreon. We got Fluffy Panda's World, we got Tim, we got LBS, and a couple others on there. I will look them up and mention them at the end. I'm sorry I don't remember every name off of hand, but thank you so much, guys. Even $1 makes a massive difference. And I just want to say, today I'm going to talk about loneliness in Japan. I think I've kind of touched on this before. I think I covered depression in Japan and just how you can end up a little bit depressed. But I think talking about loneliness here is pretty important because a lot of people get very hyped, very psyched about coming over here. But I think they need to prepare for the loneliness aspect that eventually comes from living here in Japan, because it can get pretty bad sometimes, especially even more so during COVID. I was feeling like I never left the dang house. But what I would like to say is that you come here and your first couple of weeks are wonderful. You're so excited that it's very hard to even focus on being lonely or not having friends or family over here. Maybe you do come over with friends. Maybe you visit with friends. Maybe you start a job over here with friends. It really differs for everybody's situation, but I think probably most of you would just come here to travel. But those of you who decide to come here to make a whole life, your first few months are pretty good. You're just so excited about all the new stuff you're finding out, all the new language you're learning, all the new people you're meeting, the new job you're starting, the new skills you're learning from teaching ESL, that it's not really something you focus on. But after all that stuff goes away, then you are left to dwell within your own mind and you realize, holy crap, I really do live in Japan now. This is crazy. You need to be ready for a little bit of loneliness. And this is for a couple reasons. You're going to go through a couple different types of friends. And I'm not saying every person you meet in Japan is going to be this type of person. To make such a generalization or blanket statement is very rude. But there are these types in Japan. And you will most likely go through this. Don't let it discourage you. You can make good friends. Number one, almost all your friends that you make that are gaijin or foreigners are going to leave. Barely anybody is going to stay here as long as you. Barely anybody's going to stay in the area that you're in. A lot of people move out to Tokyo. If you're in Tokyo, probably the Tokyo people will never leave. Usually life doesn't get more easy outside of Tokyo. Usually you're not going to get a better paying job either. So a lot of people don't tend to leave Tokyo. But if you're like me and you live in Osaka or Fukuoka, Kyushu area, Okinawa, Hokkaido, it's going to be a lot of people leaving. And especially with these regulations that go down now, sometimes when people leave, they don't want to leave. They're just visiting home, but then they get locked out of the country if they don't have a residential visa. So there's a lot of people locked out of the country right now, which is kind of really sad because some of them are locked out of the country while they still have family here. You know, there's some moms and dads locked out of the country and they can't see their kids. Another sad thing is, and I don't think enough people are covering this, but a lot of people are getting screwed over with college here in Japan. They paid their tuition. They were supposed to start college, and college locked them out because of the travel restrictions. and they're also not getting their money back. That is not cool. Guys, if any of you have a school that is not giving you your money back, let me know, and I will make sure to put a big announcement out that this school refuses to give you your money back. We need to scold places that do this. This is not cool. While people are struggling during COVID with money problems, schools do not need to be keeping people's money who cannot travel over here to take the classes that they paid for. That is messed up. And I'm kind of angry that more people aren't covering that. So I think it's something I will really want to bring to attention. Any school that's, I mean, this is almost like a scam, keeping people's money. Yeah, I realize they still need to be funded, but you also need to give people something for their money and not just take it, keep it, and not give them classes. Sorry, getting off topic here. Anyway, loneliness. Yeah, so a lot of people are going to go home. You're going to lose a lot of your close Gaijin friends. They're going to disappear, go home, pick up other careers, start a life in another country. Some travel all around Asia, and they eventually come back to Japan. I think we've got kind of the sweetest deal here as far as Asia is concerned, because we get paid the most with the least restrictions. A lot of people try out South Korea, and I think South Korea is a pretty amazing country, but from what I've heard, working an English job in there is way more brutal. So I think you're kind of spoiled after you work in Japan. But you're going to have that. You're going to have to keep switching jobs because almost every job you'll ever get here is a 1-year contract, and very few of them have an upgrade and pay raise year by year. So you start to get frustrated and you're like, dude, I need higher pay. Like, especially if you stay here as long as me and start a family and buy a house and want to start a company, like that's what kept pushing me from one place to the next place. It's like, okay, I've been doing this for 10 years now. Can I get like $1 raise finally? And they're just like, oh, well, we don't really usually do raises with the Gaijin here. And it's like, okay, I'll go find a better place. And you go out and you're done after 1 year because every contract you'll sign is only 1 year. It kind of sucks because, like, for Japanese, they don't get stuck on 1-year contracts. They actually rarely get fired because there's so many penalties and so many things they need to explain if they fire an employee in Japan, that even some of the worst employees ever will never lose their job. I've seen people do some pretty wild stuff that would have gotten me fired in America and still keep their job here, because usually the employer deals with more problems from firing than keeping. But with Gaijin, we don't have the same right unless we're a citizen. So they can just fire us at will. We're at will hires and fires. So yeah. You never really feel any super job security. Also, one thing I should say, this is something I want to point out. If your job isn't giving you proper national health insurance, you need to quit right away, because they're supposed to be paying anywhere from 30 to 70% depending on how many hours you're working. So make sure you're getting that. And since you're going to be going from job to job, some people, sometimes you find one that's really good. Like, there's some I've stayed at for years and years and years. But for the most part, you're going to be looking for that next best deal because you have no safety net. Your family isn't here to fall back on. There's no friends here that you can fall back on for living arrangements. So you're also going to be losing a lot of work friends too, from place to place that you go. Then finally, there comes making friends within Japan. I think I've seen that women who come here and make women Japanese friends tend to have it a little bit easier. I think, I can't say this about every Japanese person, but I feel like in general, women in almost any country can emotionally support each other if they are feeling down or feeling kind of like lonely or homesick, or they can call a friend up and explain that, and they're not just like, yo, that sucks, bro. Like us guys. So a lot of time, us guys, to fall on somebody for emotional support, it's hard to find that long-term friend. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying it's not as common with us as guys in almost every country. But I feel like in America, you're around the same people every day in your life so much that you do eventually find that friend that you both lean on each other for when you are feeling down. But in Japan, trying to find a friend that is a guy friend who you can talk to about that might work with another gaijin, but like I said, most of them go home. So then you got to fall on a Japanese guy who's lived here for a while. And it's not like in America where like you may have a friend and by like the first 6 months, you guys have told each other like all your secrets, like just everything about your life. Like, and I don't mean like your darkest, dirtiest secrets or anything like that. I just mean like maybe they know you have a girlfriend, or maybe they know you're married and have kids, or, you know, maybe they know you've lived at this place for a while, or maybe they know your hobbies are this and this. For Japanese guys, they tend to be very closed off for a very long time unless you've known them for like ages, especially if it's a work friend. Work friends tend to keep you at a work length from them. And so I feel like you never really get super close to any dudes at work. You never get to a point where you think like, oh, I could definitely talk to him about if I had, you know, some emotional baggage bringing me down. And the other thing is, if you're like in my situation where you run your own company, you know, you're the top tier guy. Who do you talk to? You know, I'm not saying like I'm a powerhouse that everybody's below me, but like the only other employee I have is an office lady, and I'm not going to cry to her about if I'm ever feeling down and stuff. You know, I'm kind of like a one-man army when it comes to my school. And that's kind of the way I felt when I worked at a lot of other places. So it's kind of a long-lasting sort of hard thing. And it's not even, I'm not saying like you got to boo-hoo your eyes out every time you feel homesick. I'm talking about just like even things like raising a child, talking to another person about the troubles they deal with raising a child, or things that you deal with here as a foreigner. It's hard to explain. Like, okay, so you have a way that you're raised in America, and you have a way that you raise your kids in America, and a lot of those ways are very different than how kids are raised here. So the troubles you would face as a parent in America, talking to friends about like, God, I can't believe my kid keeps doing this, or my kid's school keeps doing this, it's so crazy, or like, I have problems with this one teacher at my kid's school, or this other kid at a school is like bothering my kid, or my kid is having a lot of trouble studying this. All different types of stuff. Like, that's totally different in Japan. So first of all, like Juku is so hard to get used to as a parent here, because I feel proud of my kids, but I also feel sorry for my kids. Juku, if you don't understand what Juku is, it's after school cram school. Cram school, like cramming information into your head type of school, like hardcore study school. And to me personally, as an American, this looks very extreme. My kid will go to school from 8 o'clock till 2:30, come home, like have a snack, and then go back to school, Juku school, which is after study school. It's a totally different place, and study from, oh God, I don't know, like 3:30 till like 7:30, sometimes 9:30 at night there. And like for me, I just feel like, oh man, we're stealing his childhood for all this stuff. My son loves it. He'll come back and tell me all the information he learned. Like, I mean, his study skills and amount of knowledge at his age are like what I was probably in 8th grade, and he's only in 5th grade. So, like, the amount of knowledge he's taking on is massive. And to be fair, we are sending him to one of the most intense schools. Like, he purposely wanted, like, the most competitive school, and he really seems to love it. For him, he likes to go there and run to the test board and check where his test was above everybody else and come home and show his mom. But for me, I always feel like, God, this takes away like an entire kid's life. But if I try to talk to another Japanese guy about this and be like, man, can you believe how much they have to study at Juku? He'd be like, what do you mean? I went to Juku. Like, what are you talking about? That's normal. So I don't really have anybody to talk to about stuff like this. It's such a unique situation to be in. And these are the type of unique cultural situations you're never going to think about before you come here. You can't sometimes even explain it or imagine it before it finally happens. And these are the things that kind of close you off from making deep or close friends who will wax existential and talk about life with you. because the life you grew up in, even things like you want to make a joke about a cartoon or a movie, no one's watching the same cartoons or movies or TV shows or anything here. Or if you like make a joke from like a movie from your past when you're a kid, they didn't watch the same movies as you. So it doesn't even land. You're just like, oh yeah, you never saw Back to the Future, never mind. And it makes it much harder to like connect on that very personal level, if I'm making sense there. So just realize you got to think of some way to create your own safety net. I feel like with me, I'm pretty lucky just that I have like my family. I'm close to my family. They give me a lot of mental support. My wife and my kids kind of nurture my soul in that sense, because I guess I can always talk to my wife just about anything. Or I can ask my kids how their day's going, or just have a deep talk with them. Luckily, they speak English, and so does my wife. And she lived in America for a while too, so she kind of understands sometimes when I'm explaining, because she had kind of this, she said, I had the same experience when I lived in America. It was totally the same for me, where, I couldn't make jokes about like Doraemon or anything. No one's seen Doraemon. And, I'm not saying like we have to absolutely make jokes about all the media from our past, but that's like a small thing you connect with people that you take for granted until you come to a country that's never had anything culturally the same as you. So that when you do make cultural, traditional, or media jokes, you don't see eye to eye. That the person's just like, what? What are you talking about? What? And, so you kind of have to reserve your jokes for only the people in your family that have heard it or know what you're talking about, or your quips or your relation to things. Be like, oh, this is like this thing we do in my country. And, my wife's been to America. She went there for English school for quite some time. I think like 3 years. And so she has like a bigger helping of foreign life than most Japanese do. But most Japanese, a lot have not even left Japan. So if you try to even explain certain things, they're just like, oh, what is that? And they're like, oh, I can't relate to this, make a joke about it, talk about a cultural relation, because this person's never even heard of it. Instead, you just end up awkwardly explaining it. I don't know. So just be ready for that feeling. If you really do plan to move here for a long time, be ready for that sort of emptiness as far as connections go. You need to look for ways to prepare yourself for it and for some of that emptiness that you'll get eventually. I think that's probably why you've seen me take like long sort of depressive breaks in the past. Is kind of like I was dealing with some turmoil just completely on my own, especially when it came to my school. How do I relate to another Japanese person what it's like to run an English school? Not a lot of people speak English, like how do I relate to them in my struggles of growing a business? Just simple things like that. They sound minute, but they kind of hit you hard once you've lived here for a decade or more. So I'm sure others who have lived here that long can relate. What's something you guys have struggled with communicating with people in the past? Have you ever had the experience I have with living in a foreign country and you're like, oh man, I hate when this happens. And they're like, what? I don't even know what you're talking about. And you're like, oh yeah, you wouldn't. Oh, never mind. Anyway, I hope that kind of just gives you a feel for like what does sometimes sink me into like a darkness for a while or a sadness for a while. I hope I didn't ruin your day by talking about it, but I always have tried to stay very open and honest and, kind of be real with who I am for you guys, because sometimes you guys are the people who gave me the support to keep going, especially with this channel. God, I can't say thank you enough. Even if you can't donate to the Patreon, just being a viewer and a subscriber for this long and being like, I used to watch you back in the day when I was in high school. That's like a huge compliment. I don't know if everybody understands how much that means to me. Or sometimes I run into a person who moved to Japan and they're like, hey man, you're Unrested, right? Like I watched you. That's why I came here. Like that's a massive compliment. I'm just like, oh my God, wow. I have an impact on people's lives. That's an honor and also terrifying. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening to this sort of long ramble. I hope you don't mind this very unscripted sort of take on life here. And I hope you enjoyed the footage you saw today. Till next time, I've been Unrested, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.